Okay,
They
being
crumbled.
6:30, I call
no, I
this meeting of the Manchester by the State Select Board to order. Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Solacey.
Yes.
Ms. Bellata,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison says present. Mr. Brown.
Present.
Okay, public comments on non-agenda items.
I do.
Yes,
Regarding the regional climate change work updates and having the, picking one of the RFPs, it's felt that the two should be interviewed. So hopefully we can get that done soon. Thank you.
okay, interviewed by whom?
That's a very good question. It was going to be, I had reached out to the chairs of Concom and Planning Board, heard back from Planning Board. Laura Tenney is reviewing the RFPs. Never heard back from Concom, and I sent several emails. I could follow that up with a text. And Kathy Bellata took a look at the RFPs as well. So since they both have a lot of experience looking at RFPs, the three of us will do the interview.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other, anybody online? Okay, there is no chairman's report, and are there any questions on the action items or other things that we can on the action items?
I did.
Yes,
Lunch service.
yes.
I know that we
Yeah.
were waiting for some more information, but I think that should be on the action item list as well.
Yes.
Agreed.
The action, I think, was, Bion has some information to fill out. Peter and I did give him a template for a business plan.
I saw a draft today of
Okay.
it filled out, and
Excellent.
he's doing some additional
Great.
fine tuning.
Because FinCom, after that last meeting, had exactly what you were saying, have it pay for itself.
Regard to the action items, I want, the top action item that was there on the committee, could we add that as a discussion topic for a February meeting that's not crowded?
Okay, I could do that.
Probably the end of February.
Do the 19th.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, then I think we should proceed with the interviews. Yvonne Roger? Hi. Yes, sure.
For everybody.
Right. Talk to us. I gather this is for the realtor position on the Historic District Commission.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Talk to us about your experience with the Historic District.
I haven't had any direct experience with the historic district. I've been working now since 2019 with Coldwell Banker here in Manchester. But I've always had an interest and fascination with historic buildings. My husband and I renovated Victorian in Beverley over a period of 10 years prior to moving to Manchester. And I've continued that interest just within my day-to-day real estate business. But I haven't worked with the historic district before, but I would love to do that. I'd like to serve the community, and I think preserving the historic district, and it's just all these incredible buildings from the 16, 17, 1800s, which you can't be made anymore. The level of craftsmanship, materials, I think that's incredibly important. I've spoken to Rose Mills about maybe how it can be expanded even more, because there's obviously streets on School Street which are not part of the historic district, and there's lots of input from the community. You have to serve the community and people in the historic district, And of course, there's a lot of new sort of laws coming into effect which will affect the historic district in the future. And I'm sort of, sort of keeping tabs on all of that. So, I'd really like to be a part of it.
Does anyone have questions?
No questions, just thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Rosemary, thank you for coming in and support.
No, this is to fill Tracy's, no, I'm good. Not, never mind.
I just have one question. Is there a particular area or project that you're interested in?
I was talking to Rosemary about it, and the idea that there's so many parts of Manchester that's actually not included in the historic district. And so the concern in the future is if these historic houses, some of them could get pulled down and there's no recourse if they're not part of it. So that's a particular area I would be interested in maybe expanding if that was something, that was an aim of the rest of the commission to do that.
Yeah, no, I thank you for raising your hand, Yvonne, and I know that you, I guess, have had some dialogue with Rosemary, who's here tonight. And as she probably shared with you, we're embarking on a survey of historic structures and buildings here. And it's good to hear that you have renovated a house. A historic, I don't know how historic it was, but it was an old house.
1903,
Excuse me?
1903.
Okay, old enough that you have some perspective
Yeah.
and some opinions about that area. So that will certainly be a value to the commission going forward as we move through this survey activity. Great, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can only thank you for standing up and taking this. Is the meeting ready for a vote?
I move that the select board appoint Yvonne Blanchard to the Historic District Commission for a term to expire on June 30th, 2025.
Second.
Ready for the vote? Becky?
Absolutely.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
John says yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Very
Thank you
much.
Is Sandy Rogers online?
She is. I saw
She is.
Okay.
Before we get to this next, are there two open positions, one open position? Two? Okay, thank you.
Since the first resume in the packet is
Sandy.
Sandy.
Allison Unholt White on the Sustainability Committee is on as well.
Okay. I guess.
Hello,
Sandy,
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry I couldn't be there live today. I'm a bit under the weather and didn't want to get anyone.
Thank you.
So-
Becky, I have a quick question.
Through the chair, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, is that Becky, the chair?
Ann Harrison?
Oh, Anne, I'm so sorry. Anne, I don't know if it's an issue, but Brad Pitt appears to be attending the meeting. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but is that okay? Yeah, okay.
Oh,
So long as you know.
Wow. That's big stuff.
Let's continue with Sandy and hope that Brad doesn't
and Greg is taking care of them.
is not too long-winded. Becky, do you have questions for Sandy?
I do, if I may, Sandy. Your CV looks like you bring a lot of different aspects to this, to the sustainability. What do you think are the, and I'm going to borrow this from a previous select board member. What do you see that we have, as a town, have done well with sustainability, and where do you think we need most to improve?
Okay, well, I think there's been a big concerted effort for years around composting, around, a couple years ago, we got a rain barrel, program going. I think that the town, as it negotiates its business with, waste removal, has done a good job with that. I think that what we can do is more outreach. That's one of the interest areas that I have. I'm passionate about the environment. I'm passionate about the town, and what we can do as individuals. And the only way to do that is to really educate more, make it engaging. And that's what I'd like to bring to the table.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. And thank you very much, Sandy, for volunteering. That's all I have. Thank you.
No, I'm just reviewing and everything's really well-rounded in this.
Becky asked the question I was gonna ask, similar to that, like where did you wanna focus, and so you answered that. Thank you very much, Sandy, for coming forward.
Yeah, and we have a lot on our plate. I think the team is revving up with a lot of energy, very exciting. We have a lot to do to help try to conserve water. That's a hot button right now and will continue to be. And, preparing the town for some type of resiliency with the climate, and that dovetails with sustainability. So I think that's all very important, and just happy to be involved and help out.
Good. Yeah, Sandy, and I would echo that what Becky and Kathy have said. Yes, the questions have been asked, and I know that you're quite involved in the community here, and in fact, in a lot of areas that are quite closely related to sustainability, so that I know your interest and enthusiasm is there. And you've got a very strong leader in Allison, who will certainly welcome you and be quite open to new ideas and new ways of making progress in this area. So thanks very much.
Do we have anything else that we'd like, is something we need to think about? No, that we don't think, but.
Okay.
John?
On such, I'd like to make a motion that the Select Board approve Sandy Rogers to the Sustainability Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2027.
Second.
Okay, Becky,
Absolutely.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Anne says yes, John.
Says yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandy. Look forward to hearing from you in the Sustainability Committee.
Great, thank you all.
Annie as well.
Yes.
I'm here.
Hi. As before, could you give us a couple of paragraphs on what you bring to the Sustainability Committee and what your related interests are?
Sure. I have always worked in the communications in the sustainable fashion material innovation realm, so I think that I can help out with communications and getting the word out about different issues and initiatives. And what was the other part of your question?
You more or less answered it. What's your interest in sustainability? What you bring is communications.
Yeah, and I moved to town over the summer, so I'm just excited to get involved, and I'm always looking for ways to minimize my impact on the planet, and I enjoy sharing what I learn with other people and kind of getting people excited about making positive changes. I'm especially jazzed about the composting program just because I've lived a bunch of different places where there's, kind of makeshift composting program sort of available, and I think it's such an amazing luxury to have a pickup here. And I think there's a high participation rate from what I understand, but I'd love to help kind of increase that participation among residents and also businesses.
Yeah, Annie, welcome to town. There's no better way to get familiar with the town and its townspeople than to join a committee.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that everyone is very involved in this town too.
Yeah, that's correct. Is there any particular, I assume that you've probably been in touch with Allison, the chair. Is there any particular pet project or strong interest within the sustainability area that you want to focus on? I mean, the communications is very critical, and I would say maybe it's number one in terms of getting the word out and getting more people to get on board with the initiatives. But is there any particular project within sustainability that is a pet project for you, or just your skill
I
set?
guess in general, helping residents think about the resources they're using, from water to energy to waste that we're sending to landfill. So I guess that's kind of a broad answer, but
It's a
just
communications
and
answer.
settling into this house, I'm learning so much about and upgrading certain things in our old little house. I'm just learning more about what homeowners can do to have less of an impact, and also save money in the process by using less resources. So I'd say that, and the composting program, and also I think there's the committee has done a lot of events, and I love those, especially coming out of the pandemic. I think it's so important to get together in person, so I would love to help draw people to whatever the in-person events are. Touring, or we already did a tour of the water treatment center. I'm sure we'll tour the compost center at some point, and I'd love to get more people out for events like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy?
Questions have been asked and answered, and thank you very much for raising your hand so early into your tenure in town. Welcome to town.
Thank you.
No, I think that one of the things that is lacking is communication. And I think that some of them can focus on actually getting the message out. Awesome. But I think that she'll aid in that regard.
Annie, welcome to town, and thank you very much. I know 5 years goes by very quickly. So for those of us who presume to think 5 years is not very long, it is a lifetime. But I'm very enthusiastic about your communications aspect or elements that you bring, and I know that the Sustainability Committee has worked very long, very hard to get word out, and it's always wonderful when we have capabilities expanded, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Any further?
I move that the board appoint Annie McBride to the Sustainability Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2027.
Second?
Becky?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
John says yes.
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy your time on the board.
Thank you. Will do.
I've heard Brad Pitt, we know who Brad Pitt is, so don't worry about it.
Okay?
Brad Pitt is.
We're moving to the discussion items. The first one is early voting. That's, I think that's, okay, let's, so we take up the consent agenda. Are there any comments on the minutes?
Have none.
That's you.
Anyone want to put anything out? I move this like, wow, couldn't you give me a board? What happened to board? I move this like, board approve the early voting. What she did there?
Down there.
No, we're doing the consent agenda.
Number eight.
Really?
Oh, then we're good.
Yeah.
Never mind. I move the select board approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Becky?
What's going in order?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy? Anne says yes.
John, yes?
Okay, let's work, try some liaison, we have another 10 minutes before we're supposed to start discussing. And I'd be interested in liaison reports. Becky?
Yes, last week, the Board of Health met just to discuss the, their environmental tobacco, marijuana, and electronic delivery regulation, and moved to approve their proposed regulation on that. Let's see, they had some other things, but I had to go to another meeting. Let's see, and I attended the MBTA meeting, but that's John's bailiwick or yours. So that's it for now.
Parks and Rec. They haven't met, they'll be meeting Wednesday, tomorrow night, but they have gotten a report from USA Pickleball. They're reviewing that. We'll discuss it tomorrow night. Costs are a little bit higher than were anticipated, and when you factor in $10,000 for the extending the fence, there's even less money to use for sound attenuation. Now, there is still a possibility that Manchester will be selected as a test site, which would take care of those costs. And I'm sure this will be a topic tomorrow night. So that's all I've got.
And if I may, sorry. I did also attend the planning board meeting where they reviewed several approvals not required. They went over rules and regulations, mostly regarding driveways and special permits. Task force reported to them regarding a density walk they did and establishing guiding principles and how to engage both planning board and MBTA task force with townspeople. They also talked about if any members had ideas for agendas regarding annual town meeting to bring those to the next meeting. There you go. Thank you.
So I think FinCom had drafted a weekly schedule for reviewing the budget. I believe this Thursday, this week the meeting's going to be on Thursday, and I believe it's focused on the police and harbor budgets, and they're taking a look at the school district apportionment formula. They had tentatively scheduled for next Wednesday to review the DPW budget, but they were also considering meeting with Essex FinCom. Do you have any additional?
I believe they're gonna be meeting with FinCom on
Okay, so
the 24th.
24th, and so
So
then
that
that slides
kicks everybody
DPW
back,
back, okay.
Yep.
So this Thursday is police and harbor and
Yes.
school apportionment. Next week, they are gonna meet with, is that a public meeting?
Yes.
It's gonna be posted.
Yep.
So the two FinComs are getting together, and then after that, the week after that, we keep it going.
When you say this week, that's this week, or does this week mean next
No,
week?
This week means this Thursday.
This
Okay,
Thursday,
all right,
this
this Thursday.
Thursday,
Yes.
yes.
All right,
Yeah, this Thursday be police and harbor.
okay. Well, let's see, so far as the DPW is concerned, they're on the agenda, a couple of spots.
And they're here.
So I'm not going to elaborate on that. The COA canceled its meeting in January, which was last week. They canceled that, so I don't have an update in that regard. And they did not meet, well, they haven't really got together probably in 5-6 weeks now, so it's a little quiet.
The MBTA zoning task force met again with Emily Guinness, who's a consultant, who brought back potential areas and their amount of new units that could be put in various areas. The moment it's a little constrained because we're still using our current zoning regulations, which mean that a lot of places don't allow. So, but we're making, the task force is making progress toward identifying areas that seem more appropriate for multi-family housing and areas that need less. And the general thinking is that there will be at least the 40% that's required within the circle, within a half mile of the train station, and a significant development outside. Where it will be in the LCD, and where exactly the two areas being considered. One in the Gordon College land, and one off of Atwater Avenue. Actually, less Atwater Avenue and more the medical building.
And I think the Gordon College option would potentially include significant land conservation
Yes.
as a combination deal.
But at the moment, it's listed by the state as excluded land.
Correct, right.
Which would have to be corrected before December. That, and the school committee had a working session on the budget this afternoon, and decided that, in part, that they would continue to accept choice students, that they would accept between 20 and 25 new choice students this year in grades 6 through 10. That each student brings in $5,000, which doesn't sound very much given that, but it's, the airplane takes off whether all the seats are full or not. And if, as long as you aren't the person who causes another airplane to have to, so that's the thinking, and that was the first half of the discussion. And there was a fair amount of discussion about their reserves. It turns out there's an interesting bookkeeping problem in that they have spent their reserves for the fields, because they paid for the fields directly. Each of the towns has voted to repay them for their proportional amount, and that comes in as income. And they have to work out how to put it back into the stabilization without having it count toward their budget. And they're working on that problem. It's a bookkeeping problem, but their bookkeeping is very heavily regulated by the state. And the other is that they expect to ask for money for feasibility study for the Essex Elementary School. The company that they rely on for estimates says that that's going to cost about $1 million. And what has been done in the past is that the feasibility study has been split 3 ways, the school and the 2 towns. So we can look forward to a discussion of another $333,000 or so for the feasibility study. And that's higher than any of them have been, in part because we're going to be looking at reuse and relocation, and the cost of everything is going up.
So they talked about an equal third, not a proportion.
They thought their share would be a third. How it would be divided between Essex and Manchester was outside of the area.
Right, okay. I can imagine that becomes,
That's going to be
the
very,
two-thirds becomes
yes,
2/3 ours and a third
Yes.
Essex.
yes. So, yeah, that's something that would be nice to be able to discuss at some point.
Yeah.
With
Yep.
Essex and,
Would that be a subject that the two FinComs might discuss when they meet next week?
Didn't they already say they thought they were going to be getting together again soon? No?
The slated to, the Essex Finance Committee is slated to attend Manchester's Finance Committee meeting next Wednesday. Excuse me.
You hear that?
yeah, Becky?
No, he said put my hand up.
Oh, okay.
No, I did not say that, I said, do you?
That's most of the news I have from the schools and the MBTA task force. They had a very nice walk, and they're putting together the handout for the walk, for a general handout explaining what is required and giving examples of places in town where the density is about what the new law requires. And now I think it is 7 o'clock, and we can go back to our discussion items. And the first of these is early voting and the food truck at the March election, the Massachusetts primary.
So 2 parts. The first is the request to finalize the hours for early voting. So what is before you is a recommendation from Town Clerk Diane Bucco. And basically, starting on the Saturday the 24th, being from 10 to 4, and then the following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 9 to 4, and then Thursday, March 2nd would be from 9 to 6. So that's the actual early voting when people can come in and vote in person early. And then there's also the by mail option, so people will receive applications directly from the state, if you haven't already. I think they were mailed last week. And so that's another option as well, voting by mail. Those have to be in by the election day, have to be received before the close of the polls.
Well, one of these are absentee ballots, right?
Just
Vote by
voting by
mail.
mail,
Okay.
it doesn't have to be.
When do they get sent out?
So the notices, the applications for voting by mail have been sent out by the state. Those were sent out last week. So they should be in people's mailboxes
Okay, the
this week.
question is when do the ballots get sent to the people that say they want to vote by mail? That's my question.
So then they fill out the application, that comes into town hall here, and then we send the ballot to
Oh,
them.
it's not on any one particular date, it's rolling,
Correct.
it's rolling.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes.
So does Diane is she ready to collect the information as to how many people attend the early voting, like what days, et cetera, because that was
Right, tracking
it?
numbers,
She's
yes.
gonna track that, okay. Will she track how many people participate through the other methods? Because that
Correct.
kind of just a holistic picture of how people are,
Right,
okay, great.
so yes, set that up to make sure we're getting those numbers. So first vote is to approve the hours as suggested here.
That would be me, right?
Yeah.
Looking at board here. I move that the select board approve the early voting as presented by the town clerk.
Second.
Okay, Becky,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Ann, yes.
John, yes.
Excellent. Okay, the town clerk has asked that we not have a truck, a food truck. We agreed we would have a food truck. Is it possible to put the food truck outside the 150-foot
Yes, it is. Yeah, she's not opposed to the food truck, she's just a little nervous about doing it at a state election where it's more scrutinized by the state in terms of procedures, process. She just doesn't want anything to go amiss.
But if it's outside the,
Yeah.
I'm truly struggling to understand the concern with the food truck. I've read the documents multiple times and I don't get it.
And I understand Diane's concerns as she has explained them. I just don't see that it's going to be a contentious situation here, given Massachusetts is Massachusetts. But I just think that, if the truck is where it ought to be, and if anybody has any questions, Therese Meldon is here and she's proposer of the food truck.
yeah, I personally don't see where the burden, if there's any burden that falls on the town clerk. Okay. I mean, basically, it's gonna be your burden.
I spoke with Diane at length about it, and I
Just give your name and address.
Therese Meldon, 42 Masconomo Street. And I appreciate and understand her concern. She's responsible for 150 feet from the voting spot, the circumference around that. So if anything happens within that geographical area, she's responsible for it. So I understand. The last thing I want to do is make work more work for them. So if it is just moved to the end of the driveways beyond there's, I don't know, a handful of spots.
Across
down
Lincoln
there.
Street.
Right. It could just sit down there and it would be on the other side of the people with the signs. And I will be there and I will have one or two other people with me to not, from 4 o'clock till 8 o'clock when the truck would be there, to help with any questions anybody has, make sure that the trash gets collected, that there's enough, that we're there and then we disappear, and hopefully it'll be a really positive experience. Truly my only motivation is to encourage more people to get out to vote by eliminating an obstacle.
Are there,
Good question. So when you spoke with Diane, was she okay outside of 150? She didn't have any opinion?
Well, she just said within 150 is her domain.
Understood.
And I was suggesting that it be parked in a spot very close to the entrance to the building. So I don't recall if
Okay.
she said outside.
I mean, it's outside her jurisdiction, but she didn't express an opinion
No.
one way or
What she
the other.
did say is that she's all for trying out a truck in, when we have our next town election, because, not that many people show up to vote in the town election, so she'd like to increase the voter turnout for that, but she wants to get this national one under her belt.
So I actually think to have the food truck at the national election where people are actively going to vote would give the food truck more visibility so that when we get to the town election, it might actually be a draw.
Yeah.
So that's why I would like to go forward with it. And I think the people who are standing there holding the signs would appreciate a nice, some hot drinks too, so I'm okay with going myself.
I'm okay with if 150 is a concern for her.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like it's good to experiment at the 150 level this time, and you'll be within 150 the next time when she feels more comfortable. So you've got the truck out there as a kind of more than a teaser, but at least you get some exposure this time. A draw at 150 feet, and that's closer to the people with the signs anyway.
Right.
Do you want a motion?
I'm going to ask if if anyone else has comments on this, either here or online. Okay, yes, I'd like a motion.
Motion to approve the food truck for the March election to be outside the 150-foot area of the voting for
Second.
this
Yeah.
March election, state election. Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Becky, yes.
I just wanted to ask a quick, question about the process.
We know who you are, but tell us anyway.
Rosemary Costello, 12 Bennett Street. If you want to have a food truck at any town property, what is the process for that?
Getting permission from the board.
That's it?
Yep.
No like Board of Health certificates,
Well,
separate
the
than
vendor needs to be
individual?
licensed.
Okay, so you show the vendor license to the town clerk, then go to the select board?
Well, the vendor needs a license to sell food,
Yeah.
typically from Board of Health.
Okay, so go to the Board of Health, get the vendor license approved, then come to the select.
Then ask to be put on the agenda.
Got it. For locating on town property. Got it.
Is it town property or anywhere in town?
Well, so if it's anywhere in town, there's a hawker's license that you would need to approve as well.
I think we have a motion and a second. Becky?
Yes.
Fred?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
Yes.
I like the idea.
Okay. Greg, could you make sure?
What kind of truck?
That-
What kind of food?
Grilled cheese.
It's a lot,
in their
yeah,
packet.
it's Melt is the
Oh,
truck, they're out of
I
Danvers.
should,
It's right here.
it's lost interest when I got to that.
Could someone make sure that the police understand that they need to block off however many parking
Let's do that.
I
spaces?
think two. I
Two
mean,
is
if-
sufficient.
Well, two if we're going, if it sits.
If it's
um,
perpendicular to the street,
If it's perpendicular, oh, yeah, if it's perpendicular to the street, two. If it's
parallel.
parallel to the street, it would
Three.
be like 2.5, so I'd
Yeah.
say three.
So,
3 would be great.
Debbie and Greg, just
Yep, we'll make
one
sure.
more thing for the police.
But if you want, I mean, I'm happy to go down and talk to Todd.
Yeah. You may, it doesn't hurt to remind him.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, good luck.
Thank you very much, Therese.
Sound too grilled cheese.
That's a problem. You should.
It's sad.
It's good. Okay.
The next item is Ocean Street. And it's just an update to say that we are working on, well, we did a lot of work in the past couple of days.
Yes.
Truck's been very busy.
The street is prone to flooding, tends to get undercut. I would like, the town is currently looking for grants for various stages of engineering study to understand what's possible and what the best solutions are. And we also want to hear from the neighbors on what they want to see. This is, we've applied for 3 different
We have
grants.
3 in the works right now, yes.
It's an area where there is grant money from the state and some.
Right, no, it's you know, it's sort of a classic case of coastal flooding and high vulnerability to future flooding. So the state has a number of different programs that are targeted towards addressing those kind of issues. It will be challenging to convince funders and the permitting agencies that a hard solution, that is a fortified substantial new seawall, that'll be very difficult to bring across the finish line. But it is one option that we can study in terms of its feasibility. But I think we need to be prepared to study a number of different other options as well.
Can I ask a question? So it's my understanding that what the residents near that area were asking for was kind of like the process we went through for the rotunda, right? We
Present
had,
a number of different options.
yeah, multiple options.
Yeah.
So my question is, if that's our intent, do any of these grants have predetermined solutions? Are we boxing ourselves in with any of these grants? Or who's the one project leader? Like last time when we did the rotunda, there was a team and one team presented 4 options, right? And who would be the project leader that would determine, or the engineering firm or whatever that would
So they would,
present?
they would do something similar.
Okay,
So they would present a range of options.
so when we say they, the grants
They would be
here-
a consulting firm that we were to
Okay.
hire
Okay.
once we receive the funds.
Okay.
Or if we're not successful in the funds, the question will become, do we fund it on our own?
Okay,
But yes, I can, Chuck can speak to this, but certainly the engineering firms that we have spoken to are prepared to pursue and explore a range of options.
okay. So what is the criteria we are using to determine what the options are? Like, what are the outcomes that we're looking for? Is it drivability, walk, pedestrian access? Just from an outcome standpoint, what are we looking for? Have we outlined those requirements yet, or we're just trying to get money? Because I would think in order to pursue some of these grants, we have to put in the grants what the outcomes are.
We're trying, right now, I don't think we know what we want.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not talking about design, I'm talking about an outcome. So is it mandatory that vehicle traffic continue to travel all the way through Ocean Street? Is it mandatory just that the people who live there can get to their homes? Or is it mandatory that we provide vehicle access to the beach? Those are outcomes that don't imply a particular design. I'm just trying to understand how we've structured the investigation here.
So before we get to establish, we have, the consultant will give us a scope that includes some of these outcomes. But I think before we even get there, we need a hydraulic analysis and a modeling exercise like we did for, I think the more, even the rotunda referred to these models and, state models and whatnot. But when we did the CVAP, the coastal vulnerability assessment for the Inner Harbor area, that had its own model that we had Woods Hole Group develop and gave us kind of those mapping, in the short, medium, and long term. And then I think, so once we get there, that would be part of the scope. That would be a first stage, certainly visioning with the neighbors and talking to additional stakeholders would be part of that work. But I don't know that we would be able to, I think that exercise has to develop those alternative outcomes.
Okay, so
that
I
may
think
or
that's
may
what
not
I'm getting
be
at
able
is,
to be
I'm not sure, I
incorporated.
think it's great we're going after grant money. I just not sure we have communicated to the residents what is the overall process that you clearly articulated right now, and I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think when we first
That's
heard,
why we're talking about this now.
right, but so I think, because I think there was some confusion last summer or last fall when we talked about it previously, so I just want to make sure we're not.
I don't think I'm out on a limb to say that a majority of people, if they had their druthers and it was feasible, they would like to see the current configuration remain.
Right.
Or actually be hardened.
Yes. Whether or not that's feasible remains to be seen.
Fiscally or otherwise,
I'm sorry.
fiscally or physically.
Right, permitting is going to be a major challenge here. And we'll identify that and have the experts tell us what the possibilities are for permitting. But certainly I could imagine that as one desired outcome. Whether or not it's feasible or not will be part of the study.
Yes, Becky?
I had a question about the one grant that said here, the one that was up to 300,000, Vision of Ecological Restoration Near Coastal Transition Zone Cross Replacement. And that we're not optimistic that one would be, that we'd get the funding for that. Are there others along those lines that we're able to apply for? Or would we likely have the same kind of response?
So there will be additional opportunities opening up as the months go forward for the new year. This was one comment we received from one of the state folks who works on that grant. And that was, she was not overly optimistic that ours would rise to the top because of just some of the dynamics that are involved here.
And I ask because 300,000 is not going to get you very far anyway. That would be for preliminary.
That'll answer a lot of questions in terms of, what are the different options that are technically feasible, and then at least some orders of magnitude of cost. I think that kind of number would certainly purchase that kind of result. In terms of the construction, no, that's not going to go towards construction at all.
No, and I'm simply asking these so that the questions so that people who are listening in can have an understanding as well.
Sure.
So I have a question. So there are 3 grants that at least we're pursuing at this point. Do any of these granting agencies have, I don't want to say the word agendas, but do they have causes or specific directions in which they're going? Is there straight money for pursuing shoreline rehabilitation, et cetera?
Well, some of the grants will have a bias towards natural solutions.
Okay, I guess, I mean, that's kind of what I'm asking. Some of them is just.
Some of them do have that bias.
Okay, all right.
Some of the coastal zone management grants will have that bias in them. It just depends on the funding source, whether or not it's truly open-ended or if they have a preference, and that's partly how they vet the different applications.
And I think at the study phase, we're looking at everything, so like it's not gonna
I
preclude us
understand
from
that.
anything. I think certainly we would have a hard time convincing MVP to pay for a hard solution or even permanent, but that might be our walkaway point. But we run into that all the time, like the wastewater plant, when we look for grants, everybody wants us to do something, but
things
there's
a
a lot of
certain
grants
way.
they're not gonna fund us, upgrading our wastewater treatment plant, that's just not, but they do fund a study to say, this is what you need to do to be prepared for climate change.
So what might be helpful is I'm envisioning, me and my charts, Brian, right? I'm envisioning a pie chart, right? And how much would it cost to get that high level options and rough order magnitude cost, right? Like we did for the rotunda. What is that cost? Okay, you got a pie chart. What percentage would one of these grants cover? And what percentage is left? Because it sounds like if we want to be open-ended and look at possible options, these 3 grants are not going to cover it anyway.
We don't know what the
Not
cost
sure yet, but it's possible.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm wondering, let's say the 300,000 is off the table because we don't get it. Is the 80 and the 95 enough? Because I don't have a good sense as to what the total number is. That's why I've got the pie chart in my head. And is there anything left? And it seems like if some of these we might get answers on in February, and we would need to cover this in the budgeting process, right? So that's, and I think it would be helpful to show the residents that entire pie, right? Because without showing the entire pie, I think that leads to confusion that we're only pursuing one type of solution. So I just think we can communicate differently to avoid confusion.
you mentioned a hydrological study that was done on the Inner Harbor Fund. How much did that cost?
So that entire scope was in the 300, I wanna say 250,000.
Not quite, I wanna say a little closer to 2.
Yeah.
And the Woods Hole component of that, I'm not remember, I wanna say in the 30 range, but
Yeah, I'm not-
So it would be possible to do something with less than $100,000.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that 90, we would certainly tailor that scope to, get a big chunk of it. Our scope and our, the grant that we're going after, will, kind of answer some of those questions before we get there.
Right. I'm only commenting on how we're communicating about where we're trying to get the money from and its impact on our decision-making. Because if we only communicate about one grant and that particular grant happens to have a bias,
Right,
it
you're gonna wanna cover
causes
the other
confusion,
bases.
right? They want us, the residents wanna see how we're going to get all the
Before we
funds.
get any answers on any of these grants, I will have a much more detailed scope.
Okay.
And then, we can float and receive comments on it before it goes to any sort of funding agency or the scope will be irrelevant does not matter who we're going to get it funded. It's just that, this is a scope that will answer these questions and get us in the right direction. And whether it goes to town meeting or it goes to a different grade or we wait for a different round of funding, all remains to be seen. But, that's how this is gonna work from here.
So Kathy, are you saying that, to clarify, you feel that each of these steps should be posted online?
What I'm suggesting is that it would be helpful to, I keep going back to the Rotunda project, right? I just think it would be helpful to say, we're gonna go through this process, if it's a project, right? We have to do something, right? We're gonna go through this process and here's where we're at. And we're looking at these different funding sources. Probably is not gonna cover everything, but here's where we are. And I just feel like when we talk about one grant and only one grant, it drives people to think that we are biased towards a particular solution, which I don't think we are
So where
at
do
this
you
point.
think this should be represented? Are you saying on the, for example, on the DPW project site, or? I mean, this is, so it's one thing for us to say, we should, but let's be specific.
No, I think this needs to be covered as a project. I mean, I guess, Greg, when we talked about project processes last week, this might be one of those ones
Yeah.
that fits into that.
But I see this more as a waterfall
Yeah.
than as a pie chart. We're starting now.
Oh, yes,
We
yeah,
we can take small amounts of money and get a better understanding of the problem and the physical and regulatory challenges that we face.
Okay.
And then at another stage, we will have a larger amount to spend on figuring out how to thread the needle among.
So, to
I
this
think
point,
what I was hearing from, I'm sorry,
No, I'm just thinking, we wanna identify what the problem is
Yeah,
before we look
right.
for the money for us. So this is the first step, and we're not looking for solutions at this point. We wanna know what the problems are and what are the,
possible.
possible solutions or things that we can't even discuss. And not just, that's a cursory, as they say, a 10 or 20,000 foot view of the thing.
Right.
And then we can start looking at what our options are. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
So an RFP, a generic RFP, as it were, tailored, as you were saying, that can, any agency that doesn't show any bias at all. This is what we wanna know. Is it possible? What can we do?
right, so don't limit the analysis based on the funding source.
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing, and I think that's a
100%,
fair, that's a fair comment. That we want the complete picture with all the options, and if we have to pony up some of our own money, then we'll put that on the table.
And question, are we still looking for other sources?
Yes.
I mean, this is 3, and I don't know how many granting agencies, there are tons of them out there, I don't know
Right, we'll
what's
continue,
appropriate.
yeah. we'll
So, as
continue to-
Ann says, the waterfall, well, part of the waterfall is, every once in a while, there'll be
There's more water
Another
coming down,
fund.
yes,
another funding group that comes over the cliff.
yes.
Becky?
If, and just if you, are you taking public comment, there's.
I want to make sure that everyone on the board has had a chance to
I just wanna make sure that.
all of our questions.
I-
And your board is, of course, welcome to ask further questions after we've had comment, and then first I'll take comment from people in the room. Go ahead.
I just have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
We're talking, are there federal grants? Have we even, are we just looking at state grants right now?
Both.
Okay, so
Yes.
there, okay.
A lot of the federal money is a pass-through through a state agency. But yes, so there's, I don't know if it's weekly call, I guess it's every other week calls for the federal grant money that the state is sponsoring. And there are almost weekly calls on state funding.
Is there anyone in the room who'd like to comment? Yes.
Hi, Steve Kelly, 355 Summer Street. So I would like to first praise the DPW for the work they do, especially Saturday. I was amazed to go down on Sunday morning and see the whole road put back, and it was like a magic trick. I very much appreciate the focus on communications. I sat in on online on the August meeting when this came up, and it struck me as like a game of telephone. So I feel like this is a much more grounded discussion than what I heard in August. To me, when I think about the problem, I really think about it in three pieces, in the sense that I think that White Beach is its own problem to address. And really, the rocks come up about a foot above the sand on a sunny day, so I don't think that's very effective. Then there's the whole area from kind of the start of Black Beach, the fieldstone wall running past the culvert. And when I look at a 100-year-old fieldstone wall, I think fully depreciated. So,
Yes.
and then there's a third piece, which is where the resonance is at. So I guess my input is to think about your priorities with whatever money comes in, and the waterfall is a great approach. But where would you start? Would be good to build into kind of the scope of this and make it clear to the residents. I mean, it seems to me that if you're facing the water and you lost your boiler over the weekend, if you heard the number one priority was White Beach, that wouldn't sit so well. So mostly I just appreciate you tackling this.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, certainly.
So, thank you. I would just say that for the stuff that we just talked about in kind of the first steps, I think the H&H, the hydraulic analysis, is gonna have to include all three of those, because especially this weekend, looking at it, I'm sure you saw it last Wednesday, the marsh behind it was just completely full. And I've never seen it that full. And I think that if you solve either the White Beach side or the Black Beach side without taking that into account, you're liable to cause some additional problems that will need to be solved. And so I don't, you might have to implement the changes, as you said, but I think we have to look at the whole picture first, because we're not gonna be able to just pick off small pieces and study only those pieces. Yeah, thought about that too.
And Ann, if I may, so Steve does make a good comment in looking at the various pieces of this whole Ocean Street project. There are restoration pieces, and there's de novo construction pieces. And all of these studies, they handle them different ways, I think. I mean, they just have different prioritizations when you're looking at projects here, so it's good to keep that in mind as well.
Yes, please.
Yeah, hi, John Keefe, 8 Victoria Road. I've been watching this for 30 years. It used to be every 2 years it reached, and now it's every week it appears. And yes, I know you guys are challenged to solve that. A couple of things that I just come to mind is, I think as Kathy was saying, that the scope of this analysis proposal really should be vetted and available for everybody to see, to make sure that we don't leave things off the table. And Greg, as you said, maybe that requires funding from our town to augment or fill in the gaps, because of the bias that these grants all seem to have. Because I think there's things that I'm not even sure, like eminent domain, for example, might be something that needs to be taken into consideration. You've got houses that they're sitting in the flood zone, and their septic systems are just backing up into everything, et cetera. But I think also it's really critical that we think about the marsh. The marsh is really a gem for the state, the world, the oceans. But a couple more specifically though, I'm wondering on, what can we do emergency repair wise? Because I know I'm not sure if the road is still closed. I know it was closed. It is the culvert closed off still now?
I believe so.
Yeah, because I assume the culvert is in danger of collapse or.
It was more of a precaution over the weekend. We didn't want to have anybody, before we got eyes on it and got, it kind of looked at, professionally in the daylight, after the waters had gone away. So that was what it was over the weekend, and then again, with the storm today, we didn't really get back out to, vet it
Yeah, no,
closely.
because it's lifted several inches here. I mean,
Yep, it definitely is,
large heavy
displaced
trucks should
areas.
not be traveling down for that at this point, in my opinion.
I think we'll be able to open it back up, but you're right.
Then the question I have is what can we do now? Because as Steve was mentioning, we have a 100-year-old wall that is, the rocks are falling off of it. It's if you go and look, there's a big chunk of concrete like halfway around the curve before the culvert. Granite, there's like 4 or 5 big granite blocks there. I don't know why they are there. It's an anomaly. It's all that fieldstone, and then there's one section at the curve is giant concrete blocks. I'm not sure what happened there or why it would happen. Chuck, you may know from history, but something was done. But anyway, the wall is peeling off of it. There's about a 6-inch gap. It seems like it's imminent to. So I'm curious what we can do on an emergency status. And I'm also curious, and again, maybe it's part of the study, but if that breaches, so I happened to go down there this time, and the ocean was free flowing through ocean, over White Beach and into the marsh, with no restraint, quite a bit of flow. If that were to breach, are we gonna have to leave that from an Army Corps of Engineers? I know it's happened in Chatham, I think it was, the beach breached in Chatham. And, the town said, let's go fill it back in and make the beach. No, you can't do that, no. Once it breaches, Army Corps says that's a natural thing, we have to let it flow. Have we considered that consequence, literally not be able to, our hands being tied as a consequence of a complete breach of either the culvert wall or through White Beach? And as in thinking of that, what can we do to prevent that so we don't lose the marsh, literally? Because it could possibly start draining out fully in
Kind of a lot there at the moment. So I guess I'm not, when you say breach on the White Beach side, do you mean, like you said, you saw the water was already coming over? Did you mean like if it were to separate there?
Right, if there was where where the
Yeah, well, I mean,
channels through, essentially, exactly.
Yeah, so I guess anything possible with a big enough storm, like as we've seen, and we've been lucky in that respect. So I don't think there's anything we can do in the short term that would protect us from one of those big storms doing whatever it's going to do. I think what we've done in the short term with the Jersey barriers and protecting that side, and I've worked with Concom on emergency orders and different what we're allowed to do. I think we've prevented, and we will continue to prevent any major implications like you're describing. That being said, obviously the big storm, the correct direction, all bets are off. On the Black Beach side, again, you're right. It's not. You can actually kind of see the different repairs that we've made in the years that I've been here. There's the area more towards Crow Island that the fines have gone away, even though we tried to establish some geomembrane in there to keep everything where it was. That didn't work. And then further down towards the culvert, you see the actual concrete that we poured along there. Now, I think that was a reasonable thing to do for a spot repair in an emergency when we had permission. I don't think it's something that I can just go out and do for the entire linear roadway along the sidewalk. So that's kind of where I'm at right now is, what is the spot repair that we can do and implement, especially in the winter. Even pouring concrete is not really the ideal scenario. So I'm working on it. I met with an engineer out there yesterday. He's bringing back their coastal engineers next week so we can, have a better conversation. I don't have a good answer except, we will keep the White Beach to Crow Island side open, I think, short of some major catastrophe. On the Black Beach side, and especially that area by the wall, I'll do the best I can. We'll see what, we have put in some armor stones and revetment stones kind of in front of the wall. It seems to have held up in terms of maintaining the road, not the sidewalk so much, but the road. So I think that'll work. We tried restoring, so going further past the culvert, we tried restoring the dune to help, and it did actually help earlier in the season, but this storm was just big enough and just enough surge that it wiped out everything we did. So we're kind of back to square one, and I don't think we could go any further than what we did there without a major permitting effort. And again, the permitting efforts is what takes a lot more time and money, and we need to have this analysis that will supplement, inform what those decisions are. So that's kind of where we're at. And I do think that the culvert itself and maintaining the marsh behind it is in a good state. It's the roadway is the question. So we'll go back out there after this storm passes, and we can see what's next.
And I guess the last thing I do is
John, excuse me. I had a question for Chuck regarding that roadway. Do you know, when was that roadway actually put in? Do you know?
Actually, I have some
I don't have it
information on
committed
that.
to memory.
That, on the 1859 map, I have a larger map from that time. It was not there in 1876, it was there.
Okay.
So it's sometime between 1860 and 1879.
It's had a good life.
There is a rumor that
Okay,
that
hard centennial, but-
the road to Gloucester, that's not true. And Crow Island was an island, before the road was put in.
It was an actual island.
It was an actual island with a little isthmus that was underwater at high tide.
The last thing I kind of just, now, sadly, I know you're doing your best, I knew it was gonna have, all that fill that was packing fill for parking is now in the beach. And I would suggest that we try to avoid putting more stuff that's gonna just contaminate the beach. Again, having seen it enough times, I knew it wasn't lasting long. The beach, when I was down there, was a huge gray area of all this fill now that's on the beach, in the beach now. And it's not beach sand anymore, it's fill with sharp edges and a lot of other material that just contaminating the sanctity and pristine nature of the beach. So I don't know what the right answer is, but more of that is not, it would be to me both futile, but as well as, again, contaminating what is otherwise a nice, sometimes nice sandy beach.
Okay. Yes.
Brenda Furlong's online.
Okay. Brenda, please.
Hi, Brenda Furlong, 19 Ocean Street. I doubt that any of the members of the select board have had the opportunity to read the actual document asking for the grants. I was able to skim them this afternoon, and I would suggest that it would be important for you to read them to further this discussion. Several of you have mentioned the potential for bias here, and I certainly feel that that is the case. Let me just share with you some of the comments that are made in this grant application. They talk about, for example, and note that the crossing, and crossing is a word for bridge or road, restricts the natural tidal exchange. There's a request and an indication that they want to potentially improve the ecological value of the cove and the marsh. There's copious amounts of detail on how the crossing, again, the road or the bridge, can affect negatively the fish, the shellfish spawning, the habitat for soft-shell clams, sea scallops, blue mussels. And they talk about the restrictions that these kinds of crossings can potentially have adverse ecological effects. It goes on further in one of the other grants to talk about the fact that they seek to identify barriers to salt marsh migration, and that they want to develop a summary of the marsh migration potential. There's nothing here about the protection of roads. And in fact, one of the documents talks about the fact that alternative opportunities to access existing homes fronting this public way should be studied. we're back to abandonment. I also want to point out that one of these documents, I think, makes a very dangerous statement, and I underline that, dangerous. It says specifically that the bridge is a public safety hazard and not suitable for providing emergency access to residents. That's a very dangerous assertion to make in writing to a government agency. And I also have to say, I wonder whether it's true, because certainly Santa Claus rides on the hook and ladder at Christmas time to go through the neighborhood. I really would urge you to read these documents. They were filed one of them was filed quite some time ago in October, so something like over 3 months ago. And I do believe that there is bias in these grant requests. Thank you.
We still need the money, I mean, even if the grant request is trying to appeal to the defense of the ecology, the information that we get from a hydrological study is still of value in any direction that we go.
I mean, I think the grant application, I haven't looked specifically at what was just shared, so I'm not remembering, but you know, they ask leading questions in that way, and you have to answer them in leading ways to play the game. So
I would also ask, it seems to have been routine for the department to post grant requests on the town website. In this case, there's a grant request that was filed and submitted with the agency over 3 months ago, and nothing is available on the website.
Great.
Yeah, typically, we don't put letters of intent on, we only do if we get asked to do the full invite.
Okay.
You can put letters of intent on if you prefer that, but it's just, a lot of letters of intent are written that aren't given the green light to go further, so they often stop there.
Okay, does the board have strong feelings about posting everything, or Becky?
How much more time are we talking about being devoted to posting of the, I mean, if it's not a lot, I think there's no harm in posting them, and it's a good idea to kind of just say, we're trying everything here. So I think if it's not onerous, I think it's certainly a good idea. And
I worry a little bit about information overload.
A lot of stuff can get lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd have, if it were possible to segregate initial contact from.
Yes.
Yeah, we could create a separate
Yeah.
listing, sure.
Yeah, and it end up like all the flyers you get in the mail. You don't even look at them anymore. There's just gonna be so many things there.
No, but it's the kind of thing that if someone wants to look, they can go online, they can find the link that brings up everything we're
Yes. Use the search function and find everything.
So listen, right now, so we've just got expressions of interest gone in for these 3 grants right now. Is that correct, Greg? We don't know if there's,
Double check, I think.
so they're gonna look at it, and that's a short application, I don't know.
none of these are full applications.
No, we've just gone there and said, we're waiting for them to come back and say, okay, you can apply.
Yeah, basically,
and
they need
compete
to
with
tell
other
us,
people.
like, this is a good project, we want you to submit the full application, and that hasn't happened.
Right, okay, and just give us a sense of, so what percentage of the stuff that we send in actually winds up in the full application for every 10 that we send in?
I'm pretty happy if we bat 300.
Okay, all right.
All right,
I was
numbers.
gonna say, if we get 1 out of 3 of these, like that. would-
Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to know perspective. Okay, I'm inclined to go with, so long as we put in a separate category, and people understand all this stuff gets filled out, and most of it, doesn't make any difference what we said or what's going on,
Right, there's a lot of,
it's not gonna, nothing's gonna happen, okay.
And as long as that distinction is made
Yes.
with whatever's being listed. This is simply an arrow being launched.
Yep.
So based on the timing
Yeah.
of these letters of expressions of interests, et cetera, and the budgeting cycle that we're in, my question for Greg is, at what point do we have to come back and discuss whatever additional funding we might need to put into this year's budget to make sure something happens?
I mean, we need to make that decision by the end of February.
Okay.
So, we probably will not have definitive answers.
So,
I mean, at best, we would have some invitations to submit a full application by then, but that's no guarantee of an award.
This sounds like fall town meeting funding
Yes,
at earliest.
I'm just trying to understand timing.
that is a more logical, realistic time frame.
Yes.
Rosemary Costello, 12th Bennett. Are you, back to the letters of intent, are you gonna post the letters of intent every grant applied for in all the departments?
Right, that's what was being
That's the
discussed.
intent.
I think that's sort of,
Yeah, it's really hard to say. We want letters of intent that
Right.
might be historical, but not letters of intent that might be agricultural.
and I don't think these are going to be broadly looked at, but if somebody wants
Yeah.
access, let them have access.
Are there other people online with their hands up?
It looks like Mary Foley has her hand up.
Yes. Mary?
Hi, thank you, Mary Foley, 1 Pulaski Drive. I would, in addition to the posting, I would ask that, as it's being discussed tonight, if it could be in the meeting packets, that would be helpful for residents to be able to follow along. I have just a point of clarity, that conversation kind of looped around. Are those 3 submissions looking for what the issue is, mixed in with some potential solutions, or are they clean cut, we just need an analysis of this area? I was getting confused because there seemed to be some solutions presented, some issues already kind of leading towards what we want the solution to be. It doesn't seem like there's been any discussion of what the town wants the outcome to be. So I guess long-winded, are these simply applications looking for what the problem is? Thank you.
I thought we were asking what the problem was.
We're trying to identify the problem.
Yeah, I don't recall.
That's what these grants are supposed to help us do.
So I think the focus is, what are the issues and what are the challenges? And that's so step 1. It'll lead to some discussions about potential solutions. So it is a combination of both.
But not yet.
Yeah, but there's no predetermined outcome.
Correct.
Because we don't have
Right.
the first step.
Are there more online? Okay. We have applications out. We have, Chuck knows what the first steps need to be. This is a long process. And we have to balance the needs of Ocean Street with the needs of the rest of the town. So that's where we are, and we're trying to find out more. Becky?
I just wanted to go back to something Kathy said about, kind of having a team leader point person. That's you. At what point do we want to broaden input? Is that after, I mean, that's after we.
Well, certainly if we get a grant, we will be needing more input. Like I said, I will have a scope in hand within the, maybe not by the end of this month, but, you know, within the next few weeks. That I'm happy to share with people, and if they wanna put it on another agenda, we can discuss it, or just put it on our website, or you know, we'll come up with something. I kinda need to see it before I know where it should go.
Okay. I think we can,
Marion Coons has raised her hand.
okay. Yes, please.
Hi, Marion Coombs, 5 Ocean Street. So yes, I just heard something that just triggered me just to say, I believe this is going to be a long process. And with that being said, I think as much clarity as it's moving along, any input from all, here again, I guess right now it's because we're far away. We're just sticking our baby toes into the waters, and we've got a lot to learn. But with that said, as much as we can let the townspeople know what's going on, it affects me because I live here on Ocean Street, but it affects a lot more than just me. It affects those people who've been driving down Ocean Street for many, many, many years, and you know, who knows where it will lead us, whether we won't be able to do that down the road. But I think it's just very important to make sure that the town knows that we are starting this process, and that we're going to need help and input from everyone, and for us all to keep level heads and open minds and respect. If there's any kind of committees formed, I raise both my hands to be part of. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're trying to, that's why we're having this meeting right now, and we will continue to follow this. So, thank you. If there's nothing else, I would
say nothing else to discuss other than, do we think we want to put an action item on the list to revisit the conversation whenever the appropriate time is?
I'd say within the next 2 months for sure.
Okay, so maybe you could add that. Thank you.
Right, the next discussion item is the tree hearing follow-up. This is for a, I should remember it by now, I read about it once.
This was my ask.
Yes.
Old Neck Road.
Old Neck Road, a northern red oak of substantial size. And we got a follow-up report, Becky?
Well, it was just, I had wanted to find out where we were in terms of the trees. Once we say, okay, yes, this one prune, take down, protect. And so it looks as if 2 were taken down, and then you had storms come at you, so you had to.
I think everything from the last tree hearing has been taken care of, except for, well, we did the analysis of the one on Old Neck, so that's now in that phase. Correct if I'm wrong, but looking through it, I thought it was just monitor and keep an eye on it, so.
Remove one large limb.
Yeah, so we haven't done that yet, but.
Okay.
Okay, and I just wanted to say, Greg, in here you mentioned that tree is in poor condition, but I thought the assessment didn't indicate poor. It just said that all the risks were low.
Had a statement in there someplace.
Yeah, just that it was there, even the area which had been hit was not that bad. It was low risk.
Yeah, I think all the risk factors were low. I think I don't know if this is what Greg was referring to, but I think it did give it like a timeline of, 5
to 10 years. Yeah, and that it looked some of the branches had been pollarded at one time. Yeah, well, that's, yes, so.
what do we want to do? Do we want to
I
give them
just-
permission to take the tree down? Or do we want to say that the report says that the tree is a low risk to the neighborhood and should stay?
We already made that decision. This was just
Okay.
to provide information on that decision. And now we know what needs, I just basically wanted to know what happens after we've
Yep.
made these decisions on trees and where they stand in getting tended to, because you'll have a lot.
I did get a comment from someone in Friends of Trees who felt that there was not a lot of follow-up after the meeting, and I think that's something we should.
That's something I want to get on
When the
agenda.
DPW has taken down the trees, perhaps we should.
Yeah, I mean, so they've all been done from the last meeting, so I guess
Okay.
if I need to, send a memo or send an email to say
I
the
think
trees
the
are now
problem was
from time to time.
one of the, nothing had happened for 3 weeks after the meeting.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't get to dictate schedule to the
Right.
last detail.
Okay.
But, we do, once they're approved, the next day they're called in, they're on the list, they, come in, and like I said, we did have quite a few storms like in between then and now.
Yeah.
That took the contractor away from us, and, so it's a process.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
That's it. I just wanted a little follow-up.
The next item is the Forster Road water main. And this is mostly to keep everybody up to date on,
I will recuse myself.
yes. In your packet, there was a quote for replacing the main if it were done privately. If it were done publicly, it would be a little more than twice as much, I think.
Yeah, that was the ballpark I had.
Yep. Do we have any history of having accepted water mains?
Not since I've been here.
Okay.
What
was the, we did a replacement water main on Boardman Avenue.
So that was, the water main itself was a public water main, so we consider that a town main.
Okay.
Which is different than what I consider Forester. So we paid for the water main, but we did not pay for the paving on Boardman Avenue.
Okay.
So that was kind of the general difference, I guess.
My question is, if you have water meters on the houses, how do you not have town water?
So they do get a bill, they are town water.
It's town water, it's just not a town.
We consider that a service, so you own the service from the street to your house, even though you're still charged, for town water, based on the meter consumption. So these are no different,
But-
it's a common service is the difference. So if you had, say, 6 houses in the area of your driveway, because there was zoning that got implemented where you had more, we may or may not consider that a public water main, we would consider it a private service, and those 6 people would get billed based on their meter consumption just
Okay.
as normal. That's how we look at it.
So it's a private street, it's a private water main, and as if it were coming into a private driveway that led off to a bunch of small houses, or a family compound.
So I think the question you were gonna ask, is there any history in town of us acquiring a private water main? Not in your tenure, you say.
Not on the water side.
All right, but even on the sewer side?
I know. On the sewer side, we did accept Belcourt, I believe. Is that?
Yes.
And so they paid for the
So-
upgrade to this was like right as I started.
Yes.
They essentially paid for the improvement to the sewer. The water remained as is, and they and it was paved as part of one project. And then I think the town took ownership of the street,
Sewer.
which included the sewer and the water.
Yeah.
So like if there were a break on Belcourt, it would be ours to fix, or if there were upgrades that need to be made to the water main on Belcourt, those would be ours to complete.
I'm sorry, question? Did you say that the residents paid for an upgrade to what? The actual sewer?
I believe so. Is that,
Yes, there was a betterment.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we took it over after it
It was better.
was better.
Well, so the betterment was assessed because we,
Okay, okay, we did it, but we assessed them a betterment. Okay.
So there was some financial exchange there in terms of the value of the betterment, or?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
but that, so again, that's a public,
But that became a public project, so
Project.
you're dealing with wage rates and all of
Not-
that good stuff.
us taking it over after they had found a contractor to do it cheaper. So that's the difference.
Would this be a lot like Shingle Hill? Okay, we're bringing the developer would bring water main and sewer from the street to the building,
So
then they'd be metered at that end.
So if we were to walk this back a little bit, and if they were some developer coming to us and said, we wanna put 6 hills on, or 6 buildings on Forster,
Mhm.
and we want to connect them to public water, we would have the discussion at the board level and say, all right, what are you putting in for a
Mhm.
water main? Are you expecting the town to own it? If you are, you need to do it to our spec. And they would do all that development, and then we would accept the street or accept the utilities. This is a case where they want us to refurbish these utilities that we consider private. I don't have, that's debated, but not in my mind. In my mind, that's a private service.
Right, so certainly it is very common practice for a town to take over utilities that a private subdivision put in. That happens all the time in places.
Taking it or accepting.
We just haven't had that in town recently. We just don't see very many subdivisions in town. And so we just don't have a track record of that of late.
But you take that over there isn't any financial consideration in that, you just take it over and going forward, you're.
Well, the developer paid for everything up
Yes,
front.
I know.
And to our specs, and then and the town agrees to take it over, take it on as a public
Responsibility for
utility.
maintaining that.
Yeah. That's very typical. So here, you have an existing line, it's, as Chuck said, there's there's differences of opinion as to whether it's private or not. From all of the records that we're able to find, it's a private line. It's certainly possible for the homeowners to upgrade the line, and then we would take it over as part of our public water works. So then the question becomes, well, is it 100% their dime or not?
But if they did it privately, if we went in and put in a line as a betterment, their cost would be, the betterment cost would be substantially more than if they put it in
Yes,
themselves.
correct. The private sector can do construction less expensive than we can because of prevailing wage rates and the requirements that we have to follow.
So question, since we last discussed this, are the affected homeowners all on the same page now, or is there still some difference of opinion on how they would like this to be handled?
Now, I don't know that. I don't know if they made progress on.
What I'm hearing are two options. The town fix it and charge them a betterment and take it over, or, private, they fix it themselves. Right?
Yes. Now, is there a hybrid of the two? There could be.
I guess what I'm asking is, have the homeowners seen those two financial options? Have they discussed it and have they indicated to us what their preference is?
No, we don't have that communication from them.
So I'm not sure what we're talking.
What, just making sure that the board is aware of
Yeah.
the alternatives.
Right.
And they did do their homework, you know, they did get a quote from a contractor for what that cost was, so that's
Okay,
what
so
we're-
they do,
They sent that, so
they have the information.
that's what I got it actually from.
Right, the quote that's in your packet came from the home.
Ms. Jakes?
Becky Jakes, 22 Forster Road. As I recall from the last meeting, the board had asked for that information to be sent, looked into and provided, as well as that group of homeowners to have a representative. I'm not a party to those discussions because they actually only pertain to the lower part of Forster Road, so I'm not sure what's been discussed there. But that was my recollection, of what
Okay.
the
So
ask was.
is there anyone online who, no?
I don't believe
This
so.
was, so I think we can just perhaps close this discussion for now as an attempt to make sure that the board is aware of what's going on. And can we communicate again with the homeowners and explain that we would like them to organize themselves and make a proposal, or at least give us an idea where they want to go. I'm trying to get back on schedule.
I agree, we don't want to be negotiating with 6 different people, right?
No.
And right now, we're negotiating with no one.
Yeah. But you know what's going on.
Right,
That's good.
that's important.
Okay,
But someone,
the next item is the Board of Health well regulations, and I have asked to put this on because it was my impression at the last meeting that the board had some opinions on those regulations. We were asked not to appear as a board at their hearing, and I would like to know whether the board would like to codify its recommendations so that we can present them to the Board of Health as the opinion of the Board of Selectmen and not just our own ideas. And my recollection is that we had recommended that they first identify the well owners and work on education, and that they not include a requirement that people who are using an irrigation well not water when the town is restricted from watering, unless they are in the area that Scott Horsley identified as being likely to affect our water supply. And I have heard from a number of people that they think that the number of inspections of irrigation wells and the type of inspections are over the top.
Onerous.
And required tests, yeah.
Required. So, I would like to suggest that the Board of Selectmen, that we make a motion to recommend to the Board of Health that they defer their regulations on wells for a year while they gather more information and perform public education.
Second.
May I make a friendly amendment?
Certainly.
And gather more specific data as if they're talking about how wells can contaminate our groundwater, narrow it down a little bit if they can.
drill down.
Oh, that's good.
Know that.
That's good. If you accept the friendly amendment. Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just make a comment, your first point, Ann, I think, and I guess Becky has elaborated to that. We need to know more about these wells in terms of what their use is, if they're actively being used, are they being used what they originally were registered for, what's going on? We really don't know. A lot of that information, I think, needs to be kind of established before you can kind of look and say, okay, how are we gonna govern them?
And Steve Kelly made I think a good comment when he emailed a while back, just regarding point of testing. Now, if there is some contamination going from the well to the delivery site, where do you actually need to test? Is it the well or is it where it's being delivered?
Okay.
And I know that they regulate the wells, or would like to have this regulation put in. But I think
Trying to restrict what we're saying to them immediately.
Yeah.
Rather than going through it bullet point, paragraph by paragraph, but just that we recommend that they defer the regulation. While they identify the wells, educate owners, and determine which wells can be used during the declared drought.
that work.
That's totally fine with me. I think deferring makes a lot of sense. Another reason is a lot of their, I think, impetus for this was the PFAS stuff, which is subject to change in the next 2 months. So why we do it? And I think that there's also some pending situations on our public water supply registration and what we have to do in times of drought that I believe also does reference and is required on private wells as well, that may or may not match what they've written, especially if they're counting silent on it. So I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think you're right that they don't have all the information they need.
Okay, ready to vote? Becky?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
John, yes.
Okay. Water and sewer rates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Greg, did you want to bring up my?
Great.
So I did send you guys a memo, but I did put a couple of slides just in case there's anybody watching it, or just for the record that people that don't look at the memo might be able to look at. I think the first stage, I know we kind of punted on the water rates previously that were put forth by the task force for conservation rates. Getting into the budget season and getting into kind of the bigger picture stuff. I know since last time we talked about PFAS, I had mentioned that we were looking at kind of a lot of different things. One was consolidating our treatment, one was individual treatment. So a lot of that stuff has now been kind of vetted, and I have a kind of more solid footing. We also have the conceptual level costs for some of these things, and in putting together our 5-year capital budget, but looking at the long term, especially with respect to the other facility plans and other capital needs, schools and Ocean Street, there's so many things that I thought that it was at least worth the exercise and kind of putting in front of you guys this kind of alternative rate structure. So just real quick on the update on PFAS is, I think that we are looking at individual treatment options, so one at Lincoln Street and one at Gravelly Pond. I do expect that the limits that were proposed last March by EPA will be enacted in the next month or two, which will kind of set the timeline, going forward for remediating PFAS on public drinking water. Greg, you might want to go to the next one. So that's basically what we're saying here. I think that what we've done so far at Lincoln Street is not really going to change. We just need to size some of the things, go through the permitting processes and go through, check off all the boxes. But we will get to a point, Greg, if you want to go to the next slide, where we are basically adding a treatment building behind the well and the existing chemical building. So that's the big kind of one behind it.
The one with the green door.
One with the green door, yes.
Exactly. That's like a garage door so that we can wheel in the vessels.
I know where you were going with that.
So in 2022, when we first did this study, that was 9.7 million. Obviously, supply chain and, we're gonna be competing with, every other water supply probably. So, we are a little ahead of the curve, but we're not that far ahead of the curve. And this will also treat for iron and manganese, which is a big deal. That's the stuff that we're cleaning out of the pipes that, has been there for 100 years. So that's kind of, we are doing that. Like that will be required. Gravelly Pond, a little less clear. This is what we've done so far, which is basically the square box there that I kind of highlighted and blew up. That's basically we're adding an addition. That's kind of, this was when we were still considering treating everything at Gravelly Pond. So the next step is we're going to be doing the piloting and bench scale testing to knowing now that we're going to be treating Lincoln Street separately, so not all up here. And so I'm confident that this will change and the footprint will be smaller, but I can't quite put a number on it. So that's why in the memo I kind of presented kind of the worst case scenario of, it would be a $16.8 million, though this memo is a little bit more recent, 2023. So, and the reason I put dates on it is because 5 years from now, if we're doing this, 16.8 is not going to matter, but that's what it was last year. So that's why I said the bullet here is additional considerations. But that's, kind of the worst case scenario that, in this year's budget cycle, we have to kind of keep in mind when we're doing this stuff. So Greg, if you want to go to the next slide. So the other kind of capital item that we've talked about before, and there was a recommendation of the task force, is this meter pilot and study. So I'm sure it's hard to read where you're sitting, but the idea here is that you get almost real-time data of what you're consuming at your house. These big bars these are just days at this one house that we turned on. So we literally turned it on, I forget, beginning of November, and right away it was the purple bars at the bottom mean there was a continuous use 24 hours a day. That means you have a leak like that. So it's very obvious in real time. Usually we would have had to wait 90 days for a billing cycle to say, hey, my bill, based on the water that I'm consuming in my house, is 10x, 100x, whatever the number is compared to what it normally is the quarter before or the year before during that same cycle. So, I forget the exact number, but it was roughly this one leak. And you can see it was way up there every day. And then all of a sudden it's like almost zero. That's when they fixed the leak. Because the software, it told us immediately that there's a leak at this address. But if that person had also, which they should have, because they requested to be in the pilot, signed up for the app and get the alert on their phone and go through that whole thing, which takes all of 5 minutes, they would have got that alert and they would have been able to do it. So now, the win here, it's a win for conservation because we're not wasting all that water. It's a win for us because we're not evading a bill 3 months later. We're not wasting that water. It's staying in the aquifer. So these are all wins. So we turned on 20 systems so far, 20 different meters counts. We had 2. This was the worst one. There was another one that was the same thing. So that goes a long way to kind of the conservation end of things. The other thing is there was 2 other accounts that I didn't kind of share the data with, but they were people that have continuous use, but it's actually not a leak. It's because they have things that use water continuously that they didn't realize were using water continuously. So, and this is kind of goes back to the well thing and PFAS, and there's been a lot of other questions about what are we going to do? Why aren't you buying me a filter? Or why aren't we have these other in-home systems that we can do? And the answer is because that uses water too, and that's what these other continuous uses are. And so if you're trying to conserve, it really goes against everything that you're trying to say. And not only that, these systems, the rule of thumb if you do an RO system, which is kind of the foolproof one to do, for every gallon it makes, it wastes the water that goes into either the septic or the sewer. So that now we're treating that on the back end, all these things. So that's why I'm not really a proponent of it.
Yes.
And it's not really, a good way of doing things. And then that's one system. You could do a GAC system similar to the vessels that I showed, but then, and this goes back to the well regulations, is that person is not monitoring it continuously and changing it out when the recommendation is. And they don't know if our PFAS is the kind that their filter is taking out. And all these things that we measure at our well and in our system are things that we do because we're required to by law, but also because we have the professional staff that is available to do these things. And that's what you're missing when you enact well regulations like this that, aren't really gonna, if your problem statement that you're trying to solve is to get PFAS out of water and protect people from PFAS, I don't think this is the answer.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So your PFAS answer is we're going to have to start on Lincoln Street as soon as possible. How do we finance it?
Yep, so that's the next one. So here, I just did a look back to 2017 of our revenue and expenditures, and I put some of these numbers in the memo, but here it is kind of in the graphical form. So the yellow is the sewer, I put that in, even though that's not really the focus of this, it, could be another one, and then blue is the water, and it's probably hard to see, but the dots at the end are kind of our projected, what I'm asking for in this year's budget, and this is just operating. This is not capital to pay for PFAS or, any other, meters or water mains or any of that stuff. And so you can see, or maybe you can't, but what I'm showing here is on the water side at least, we're very, very close to our 4 quarters of revenue equaling what we're have to spend on the operating budget. And so that's the, kind of problem that I'm trying to solve when I put together these rates and this rate structure is, even without the financing, 9.7 million for PFAS or more, we're getting very close. And the rates that may or may not go forward in the future, whether it's 2.5% across all tiers or conservation rates, or that's all a guessing game. This is real data that needs to be accounted for in our budget. So then, if you go to the next one, what I'm proposing and what this is common in other areas, and you can call it whatever you want. I'm calling it a meter fee. It's a fixed fee, or you could call it a capital improvements fee. That's another way to do it. There's other areas where it's it's just your base fee for the privilege of being connected to the town water system. So I'm calling it a meter fee, and essentially what I'm saying is we're going to be buying these meters. I presume that based on the information and the recommendations that we're probably going to go forward with this meter program. Maybe we could have this meter fee pay for that meter program. So it's not a separate tax, it's not a separate rate, it's this meter fee. But in the longer term, that same revenue could pay for our PFAS remediation. And these are
rather than saying, okay, you're getting a new water meter, we're going to charge you $500 for it. You're saying we're going to have a meter fee, which is charged every year, and the money from that goes to improvements, capital improvements in the water system. Is that approximately what you're?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So in terms of, the meters are kind of not a one-time expense, but they're you don't have to replace. How often do you have to replace a meter? If we
So
got these
you
meters?
expect a 20-year life cycle.
Okay, so good long time. What's the downside to having a meter charge and then a separate charge for PFAS? Something that describes to people what the money is going towards. Because I'm a little uncomfortable with just this quarterly charge that is not well defined on the bill. This is why we're charging you money. It's a little bit like my old cable bill or whatever. There's this stuff in here and it's getting piled on, and what is this charge? I don't know what that's for. When you're doing a rated service and you're charging fees, because I generally agree with the concept, but I think communicating to the person who's getting the bill on what the fee is for as clearly as possible is important.
So I think I'm trying to do that. I guess
Well,
my
I
question
just-
back to you is, are you saying it should be 2 separate
Well,
fees,
what I'm
or because I'm just saying we're calling it?
What I'm suggesting is a meter fee sounds like a one-time thing or close to it, but this PFAS expense could go on for a
Yeah,
number
it's gonna
of
pay for the
years,
bond.
right?
Yep.
So
I think I said in my
I'm
memo
thinking
then that
to-
calling it the meter or the capital improvements or PFAS and meter fee or something like. So I was combining it there.
Okay.
Here when I just say it out loud, I'm saying meter fee, but
Let
I
me-
do mean that it would be.
Let me clarify my
all of it.
comment then. I'm presuming the meter installation would be, how many years did we talk about? 3?
Couple of years.
Couple years, and then it would go away, okay? But then we'd have these other fees okay, for PFAS remediation or whatever, but I'm stuck on the meter fee a little bit because I don't think it's something that should go on for 20 years. If we're gonna have the installations done in 3 years, that fee should go away.
So I think,
Unless
I
I'm
see,
not
I see the
understanding
problem,
something,
but
yeah.
so just it's a fee based on your meter size. That's how I'm defining it here.
Right,
But it is a meter and PFAS or capital improvements fee or whatever. It's not, so you're
I
right, the
understand.
meter and PFAS and any other capital that you wanna put is related to that one fee. I'm assigning that fee value based on your meter size.
understand.
And so that's why I probably,
Okay,
I can see how that, go back and forth, how I wrote it.
Why did you have the same fee, the same quarterly charge for, I would kind of expect 75, 100, 100 and a quarter, 150.
Yep.
Rather than.
I have no preference really on that. I would just, I would say a typical normal, I'm a family of 4, I have a 5/8 meter. That's generally, 5/8 and 3/4 is your, it's the smallest meter they make, so it's not that you can't go smaller than that. And that, like you see here, covers just about everybody. When you get to those larger 1 inch and above meters, that's cost more than the 5/8 and 3/4. And it's
indicates that you're using
indicative of a lot more use for one reason or another.
That was a good question. I'm thinking the opposite situation. I thought we had a lot of homes with, 2 or fewer residents. And I'm wondering if a $75 new charge is equivalent to their entire quarterly water bill or close to it. So are we doubling?
So there certainly probably are instances of that, and certainly in like off season. So I'm assigning this on a quarterly basis based on our quarterly billing cycles. There are certainly people that leave town for the winter that would now have a minimum, that have a otherwise zero bill that would now be a $75 bill or whatever, is their size meter.
So
that's certainly possible, but I also think that's
question.
needs to be that way.
Yeah, so you've got $1 million here, and I think you said the project was about 1.5, right?
Just for the meters, yeah.
Yeah, just for the meters. So in 6 quarters, you've covered the meters here.
Should.
Okay, so on $75, $450, most people are $75, and so that's $300 a year, and $450 they'd pay. And I don't know, maybe that's the number. I mean, if you've got a really giant meter, I mean, that's a lot of money, but I don't know what those meters cost when you got a 2-inch meter, but you're obviously dealing with more water. I mean, I kind of am where Kathy is. They can understand, we got new meters, they're gonna go in here, we're gonna be able to do all kinds of stuff, and it's really gonna be cool. But it's not, it's like
Not a perpetuity.
it's like the Mass Pike, okay, you paid for the thing,
Yeah.
now take down,
30 years later, we're still paying those tolls.
now take down the tolls. They've done that in a few places, not in Massachusetts,
I guess in my thinking, putting it together, it was more of a,
but for the other stuff too.
so we can't do anything until we change the meter, right? Because we don't,
Right, I guess what I'm just.
because we're not, there was a lot of talk, when we had the task force meetings and, presentations about carrots and sticks and
Right.
all these different things. And so the carrot is, okay, now you can take control of your usage part of it with the forethought that at some point, the idea is that these numbers are coming down in terms of usage and we still have fixed fees, whether it's in our operating or in our capital, that we have to pay for. And so I'm offering this as a way to pay for it. I'm not married to it. I'm just saying that in lieu of a tax rate or something else, when there's all these other competing needs for taxes, this allows the enterprise fund to pay for it itself, and it's a defensible way to do it.
Has FinCom seen this?
Not in detail like this, no.
So I'm generally in favor of a fee-based approach to try and deal with some of these capital expenses. However, I'm a little uncomfortable with the exact technique here. I'll use that phrase, technique. And I think that it would be valuable for FinCom to take a look at this, offer their
So their initial reaction, without going into in depth, their initial concern was
Well, they have seen it. I'm sorry, I thought you said no.
just in concept. We haven't
Okay.
presented.
Yeah, no, so I
actual
purposely came here
numbers.
first because, first of all, I'm not meeting with FinCom until the end of the month, but also,
We're friendly.
Oh, yeah?
Well, you guys are the water commissioners
We,
on that.
you know, we spent 5 minutes on it
Oh, okay.
at one
Okay.
meeting.
So I must have missed it.
And some initial reaction was, well, I'd rather see it user
Yeah.
volume based.
Right.
So that I could, if I am really concerned about what I'm spending, I could try to conserve by using less water.
Right.
But on the other hand, that works against what Chuck is aiming for, which is a steady stream, a guaranteed
understand,
stream of
but-
revenue.
Well, and we're not,
So-
this is not in place of the consumption base. You can still lower your consumption
Yes,
as far as zero, but I still need to recoup our fixed costs.
Becky?
I would like to go on the record saying I actually do like this because it gives, it can always be amended, but it gives a stream of income that is not tax-based. And it's, we all have water meters. So
Not
I,
quite.
you don't have a water meter?
No, not me. The people on Loading Place Road don't have water meters.
Well, there is that. And I guess those who have wells don't have water meters, but then they,
Then they don't get any benefit from any of this.
and
Right.
exactly. I don't,
I totally agree that having the enterprise funds actually fund themselves.
yeah.
It's good, but there'll be a lot of noise,
Loading Place
75
Road
bucks.
must have a meter. It'll just be a bigger one and it will have to be, they can't be unmetered.
But at $75 a quarter, there'll be a lot of people, that's a bigger number than their water bill.
that's right.
Well, so I agree that there's definitely an element of,
But
you know, outreach and understanding and education that needs to go along with this. My response to that is that, you know, and I think maybe not, I assume in this room, but even if they're not, you know, I don't hold it against you, but, you know, people are used to paying almost nothing for their water, and that's just not the world we live in anymore.
Absolutely. I
And
guess,
so there is an education piece of, this is not free, and $75 a quarter is much less than your cable bill or your
yeah,
phone
no,
bill. or
if
your-
I could clarify
any of these
my
other bills.
agreement with what you're saying. I think we're talking about two different things. Personally, I am separating out the meter issue, how we fund the brand new meters, because that is not a 20-year thing, it's a 3-year thing, okay? And that fee, whatever it is, 70, whatever, it should go away when we're done paying for what we need to pay for, okay? The PFAS is anything that's ongoing and a long-term capital expense. I don't disagree with FinCom, there may be some consumption based, but if you wanted to do a fee for that, I just think there's
Well, so
separation there.
I think this can solve both of those. At first, it will be the meter fee, and it will be paying for the meters, because we're not gonna have the project for PFAS. And so you guys as water commissioners, we come to you every year and say,
So,
these are the rates, can you approve them? And I would make this part of that rate structure, and we would go forward with that, and then 4 quarters later, we would get back to it and say, okay, are you done paying for the meters? Are you done? Or, you know, is that 2 meters out or whatever? And I would say, yes, no, maybe. And then I would say, we are also, you know, 12 months away from having a much larger PFAS bill that is gonna need to be paid. And so we can have the debate at that time, or even if it's not a debate, just say, do we wanna keep that fee and repurpose it from a meter fee to a PFAS fee? Or do we wanna completely knock it out and say, yeah, it's no longer, this cost matrix doesn't work anymore, so scrap it and give us a new cost matrix. You know, that can be part of the meter.
Yeah.
Or part of the rate structure every year. But I do think that it does make a lot, and I think it'll work out this way, is we will approve whatever we approve to pay for whatever it's paying for, and then it'll be revisited. And I think that ultimately, it will be pretty close to this, with some tweaks or, you know, just decisions from the board and FinCom, whether or not it's all at once, is it bonded, is it not, is it, you know, I think the numbers I presented are kind of the worst case scenario when it comes to the, you know, 26 million. In due time, there will be much more clarity on this is how much we're getting from the state, this is how much we're getting from these other players. And we'll have actual bids, that'll be fun when we're not basing it on these numbers that are years old. So like, I think all those things will be asked and answered in future rate conversations that we have.
so we don't have to approve this right now.
Nope, I just wanted to kind of give you this is where I'm at, and
No, I was gonna say, I get what Kathy's saying completely, but I think that And since we don't have to make decisions.
Yeah.
So we start with a meter fee and we change its name in 3 years to the PFAS.
I think that.
Yeah, that's essentially what the
The template is here.
the number goes up.
The template is a good, I think
All
that's
right.
a really good way of
One-
saying it, yeah.
One other observation is $75, and maybe that's a real number, you're kind of putting it out there, and seems like it's a reasonable time period to amortize the cost. All of those people who are on sewer, you know, the majority of the consumers, they just see a bottom line, and the sewer number is in there. So they may be using $60 worth of water, but they're using $150 worth of sewer service. So they're seeing a bottom line that is bigger, that will not jump out on at them so much. The people that are not on sewer, that's $75.
That's gonna,
And
Yeah, just a quick question, Rosemary Costello, 12 Bennett. With the new smart meters, is this going to create new work for you monitoring the data?
So that's a good question. The answer is you can put as much effort into mining the data and using the data as you want, or you can kind of set it and forget it. So like the example I showed, the 24-hour continuous use, that's an alert that we want to get, that we have the ability to disseminate that information back to the user, or send an email. We're a small enough town with a person that's dedicated on staff that I don't foresee a problem. Now, certainly once we turn it on and there's 2,400 of these points, that might be a little overwhelming, but I think we'll plan for that accordingly. I think, and then it gets to the next level, and this is where I think we would tap the sustainability committee or the other people that are in this realm on the town, is we would give them whatever data we had and say, here, you guys use it, and educate people on these other things are going to pop up based on this data, which we will now have that we don't have.
So you're not
but
gonna have
that's
to
how I
allocate
look at it.
additional man hours to monitor the data?
It's not my intent to do that.
there should be some thresholds that you can set, the system will alert
Yeah.
you when it
Yeah.
exceeds the
And
threshold.
for the most part, I think people will opt in to know themselves. So that will be hopefully what we see. Certainly there will be people that don't, but there will be.
I was just looking for another way to justify your fee.
Yeah.
That you're gonna pay another person.
Yeah. And so I think that just the data is what we're paying for.
Mary Foley has her hand up.
Yes, Mary?
Hi, thank you, Mary Foley, One Pulaski Drive. Two, just questions of clarity, please. The slide says if you have 2 meters, so is that if you have an inside meter and an outside meter for irrigation? It would be 75 times 2 each quarter?
So again, this is up for debate or consideration. I would say yes, if we're replacing your meter and you have 2, that it should be included in the meter fee and you should get that fee twice. There will certainly be instances where that $75 fee is worth more than the savings in the meter itself, whether it's a deduct or an irrigation line. So you might opt out of having that meter, and that's fine too. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Less infrastructure long-term for us to maintain in the meters. But can be a decision that a resident makes based on their own personal use and criteria. But I would say that it should be, but again, it doesn't have to be. It can just be the main meter is what is accruing the fee.
Okay, so but what's being presented tonight is that it could be an additional 600 to 2,000 a year for a home.
Yeah, it based
you've
on
got
the
the
2645
small
is
meter.
just the number of meters. I did not distinguish between first meter or second meter. That's just the total number. When we do a project to replace all the meters in town, it's gonna be 2645, so that's the number I used.
Okay, no, but I'm just saying that, as a resident, looking at a potentially 600 to,
I mean, almost everybody's second meter should be, by God, it should be a 5/8 meter. There's no reason for it to be bigger than that.
Big lawn.
Yeah,
Right, no,
I mean,
no.
believe it or
Yeah,
not, like a
I'm
1-inch
just-
meter, like the flow that can go through that and be recorded is enormous. So these 2-inch
Okay,
meters
but at
are even more ridiculous.
it's $600 a year.
Yeah, if you had 2
program.
5/8 meters,
And
that would
then-
be 600 or
Okay.
yeah, 600.
And then just a question, and you might not know this yet, just talking about if this were to go forward. Do you consider the carbon filters that will be needed for the PFAS remediation as an operating cost? I know like Littleton spends $500,000 a year on carbon filters for their PFAS remediation. So is that something that you would want to pull this money for?
So that has not been considered as part of this effort. This is only to fund the capital. But we do know those numbers going forward, generally speaking, and that's what our decisions were based on, was the life cycle cost of the different alternatives, not just the capital costs.
Okay, thank you.
It's a work in progress.
Thank you very much.
Questions, let me know. I guess just for my own, so I will make sure this is discussed at my FinCom meeting for my next budget. We are currently reading and sending out bills for the second quarter of, so we basically just did a 2.5% across the board, with the previous, when we were upping the rates. So that has been billed for quarter one of the fiscal year, and now we will be quarter two. So the question will become, do we put anything like this in place for quarter number 3 or 4, or do we just wait till FY25 to coincide with, the next year's budget? But these are other, I guess,
So by,
decision
if we
points that
wanted
we
to
need to
do
make.
that, by when would the decision need to be made?
Less than 3 months from now, so call it 2 months to give us a month.
Should be able to make a decision by then, right?
When is the FinCom meeting?
So I believe, although maybe it changed, I thought it was the 31st.
Is,
For me.
I just, does it make sense for us to attend that aspect of their meeting?
I think you may.
I know we have a lot going on, but.
We have a fair bit going on. We can get a report back on the FinCom's opinion. We can decide whether this is something that we can do off-cycle with the town meeting. We can raise the water rates anytime we choose on a quarter. And when do you plan to start putting in the meters?
Well, so I would need approval at town meeting for the 1.5 million, and then that, assuming that's available on July 1, is when we would start the process, or, I would,
So if
we would generally be around that time frame.
If we were to, assuming that the town meeting approves the installation of new meters, then after town meeting, we should take this up again and decide how, because the town is going to say, we're going to bond that, I'm reasonably sure. Or are they gonna, or is the FinCom gonna take that out of reserve?
Because that'll be part of the
It's
discussion.
part of the bond right now.
I think it'll be part of the bond. That bond might be reduced some by spending down some reserve, but
But we would start paying back after the town meeting for sure,
oh, yes,
so.
yes.
Yeah, I just need the ability to award a contract, which means I
Yeah.
need to be able to say that the money's somewhere. Either be approved for purposes of bonding, or reserves, or general fund, or enterprise
But
fund.
certainly not, we're not going to approve it based on water rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you
You
don't,
identify in town meeting where the funding will be from, usually.
How long did they take to get the
That
meters?
was the lead time,
Say it again?
the lead time.
If they win the contract, it'll be a couple months, they'll start, sending us a couple hundred at a time probably, or however, yet to be determined.
okay. Question, do we need to make a decision on who the provider is? I mean, right now we have a pilot, product A versus product B.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So that was just for our benefit. I think the way it will happen is we will put out an RFP soliciting
Right,
proposals from all of the manufacturers, not just the 2 that we piloted. And then
Oh,
we
more
would
than
score them based on their proposal to us, that will, go over some of the things that we've now learned in our pilot of, oh, we like this, we want an app, we don't want an app, we want all these different bells and whistles will be part of that RFP process. And then we will select one, and it doesn't have to be just on price, it can be also on qualification that we set forth.
Would that include installation, or is your team doing all of the installs?
No, so we would, the 1.5 number does include all installations.
I mean, would we be contracting that out?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
that would be part of the 1.5 million. So that would be the intent. If we wanted to get the whole town done in 1 year or 2 years, we would definitely want to get a third-party contractor. So that'll either be part of a separate bid process, or we could make it all in one process if we wanted, but it will be at the same time.
Or provide them an incentive, a financial incentive to get done early.
Yeah, that's part of it, yeah.
Sarah Millish has her hand up.
Sarah?
Yeah, it seems to me that if you want to raise the money to pay for the meters through the enterprise fund, that would impact the funding that's approved at town meeting, because it would be paid out of the enterprise fund rather than bonded or out of reserve. So it may be that a decision needs to be made before the town meeting. That's my thought. Thanks.
Thank you, you're undoubtedly right. Yes.
Rosemary Costello, Joel Bennett. If the town doesn't approve this, can I get a meter on my smart meter?
I don't, so the two that we're piloting are not our current vendor, and I do not know right now what our current vendor provides. They are scheduled to come in and give me a presentation on what they can provide this month. So the answer, 6 months ago, no, you could not. But the technology, and they want to sell us these things, they just didn't have, we didn't have the apps, and that all had to be developed. So there are other third parties separate of the meter that will certainly tell you the same information, but we don't have those.
But that's a good question, because if enough people are interested, perhaps.
It could be that our current supplier is one of the people you solicit an RFP from.
Yeah, they will definitely propose, it's just a matter of what they can offer.
So that happens in July.
To find that.
If it's approved.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we start
assuming that the town.
start the change out
if
in
the town meeting-
July, give or take.
Okay,
And so I think, though, following up on Rosemary's question was, if the town does not approve it, are we still going to provide a mechanism for a homeowner to optionally get a smart meter? Yes.
It's not something we've considered right now based on our current supplier, but it's in the works.
Okay, so it will become available, but it is not today.
I
maybe.
need to know what they provide.
I'm just
They
thinking
don't-
that.
6 months ago, the answer would be no.
Understand. What I'm suggesting, though, is Rosemary is asking a question that's going to get asked at town meeting, so we probably want an answer before.
They want to come in and tell me, okay, we've got to figure out this is what it is, it's just that meeting hasn't happened, will happen.
Okay.
I said the end of January, but we haven't set a date.
Is it fair to assume that if the town doesn't, the meter would be cheaper for the end consumer if the town were to approve it? In other words, it might cost $300 versus $600 if we're buying it.
In a competitive bid environment, we are going to get a better price for 2,600 meters
You're
than
buying
2.
But if the choice is
zero.
having one or not having one, that's what we're getting at.
No, I understand that.
So, a question with regard to Rosemary's question, are there other providers that can provide standalone meters for a homeowner?
Well, so for the purposes of knowing your own consumption, yes. For the purposes of us billing and
Yeah, no, but,
be party to that, no.
but for knowing your own consumption, yes, okay. And having your own app or something to.
Yeah.
Okay. So it exists.
But as Kathy pointed out, this is good information to have going into the meeting.
Okay. I think we have covered this one fairly extensively. And the next item, which we should have got to 20 minutes ago, I think we're done with you.
I was gonna listen, I
Thank
think,
you.
I think I'm out.
If you get it out.
Thank you, John.
See you later. Have a good night.
Jack.
Had the guys salt the walkways out back, so it should be good.
Oh, yay.
Thank you.
We're going out front.
I know.
Going out back too.
Slid on in.
I'll just crawl across.
Thank you very much. That was really scary, but you're exciting coming in. Okay. We discussed the appointment policy and there were recommendations that we make a consideration when making reappointments if there were vacancies in the board or committee. And I have attempted to include them, and in the process decided that I wanted a stable numbering system, so.
I really like that book.
I added the word in 3C, subsequential, because if you're on a board and then off, I think you start over again.
Question on that, Ann.
Yeah.
Is the downtown improvement, is the DIP, is that 1 year or 3 years?
That's a 1 year.
It's an annual. I don't know why it's an annual, but it is.
No, I saw that, scratched my head on that a little bit.
Yeah.
How do we accommodate that in this, right now, we're assuming everything is 3-year deal?
No, this is just in terms of terms. It doesn't say 3-year terms or 5-year terms. And as I think Sarah said to all of us, the ZBA used to be 5 years.
Right. I think John's bringing up a good point. Would we want to have this applied for, does the length of the term matter in the language?
It only in the wording in C, because it says positions held by members in their second and subsequent sequential terms. And a second term for a DIP person is year 2. But they get 5 before.
I'm not sure why we have 1-year appointments. I would just
I-
make it
why
every
don't we
3
just-
years.
Can we make it
Everything 3.
Yeah.
I think we just should
I agree with
standardize
that.
that.
Yes. I think that
Is
would
that
be-
the only committee that's the way?
And I don't understand the rationale.
I
Is it
think
the
it's
the only committee, yeah.
Because we used to have some committees that were 1 year.
I would have to
2,
look at that.
Historic
We
district
have
does.
a 1, 2.
Yeah, okay, I knew there was somebody who did.
But I can't think of why we need to have different lengths of terms. Just
Right.
make them all 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really good point, John.
So if it's 3 years, then the copy's fine.
I did, I really liked the changes. I thought it was, captured everything. A suggestion on 3E.
Yep.
When we talk about if a position has been advertised without attracting new candidates, the person may be reappointed without reapplying. Should we insert after the word advertise, like for a period of 2 weeks, some timing around the advertisement? How long are we gonna wait before just
Yeah.
reappointing the person who's there already? So I was suggesting 2
Why
weeks.
don't we use the same time
Yeah.
frame that we do for notices for.
Isn't that 2 weeks?
That's
That's
2
what I-
weeks, yeah.
It's good enough
That
for town
makes
meeting.
sense.
I think that probably needs to be a separate bullet, saying that, empty positions are advertised for 2 weeks.
I know we had discussed it before, I guess I didn't, maybe we didn't put it in the,
It hadn't,
okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking if we're going to
Yeah.
reappoint someone, we should probably specify how long we're gonna
So-
let the advertising hang out
Okay.
there.
Because it is somewhere, but I think it doesn't hurt to put it in this as well. I think in this appointment policy.
since we talk about advertising starting in B, put something between A and B, move everything else out, saying empty positions shall be advertised for 2 weeks.
Empty or position? Because aren't we saying that some positions, whether they're empty or not,
Okay.
just positions being advertised
Okay.
will be done so for 2 weeks. Something
Or
like-
until at least one candidate comes forward.
So someone steps up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 weeks, or until,
A candidate is identified.
do we say that? I mean, do you leave them in there, or do we just, they're not,
I mean, we've had some
Genuinely.
vacancies for quite a while, like the two we just filled on the sustainability committee have
oh,
been
there
there
are
for
none.
quite a while.
Animal control, there are a number of them which are,
Okay, what do we mean when we say advertise? Because I have just kind of glossed over that.
well, we have the official town
Website, it's on the
paper,
town
which
social
is the
media.
Cricket, and we have the town website. We can do it in the Tide.
It's been posted,
Yeah.
on social media, the town's social media channels.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, maybe,
Has been posted and noticed.
Posted,
Yeah.
that's a much better.
Yeah.
Is that an official term?
yeah, I wouldn't get too specific on the
Yeah.
channels.
No, I would not.
Yep.
That's a moving target.
Well done. Posted.
okay.
Just notice a position will be posted.
Yeah, probably make that a major bullet between attendance and reappointment. Saying that,
Mhm.
and 2 weeks, for at least 2 weeks.
At least 2 weeks.
Yeah, at least 2 weeks, that just covers it.
I'm just, you don't need J on the listing of boards. Number one,
Okay, hang on.
that's not your appointment.
Okay, fine. Got it? I think these are all the quasi judicial. How do we go about making appointments, making the downtown improvement a 3-year?
You just make that declaration that when you do the reappointments. And let the board know that that's your intention.
So sometime between,
We'll let them know now.
Well, we need to let anybody who's submitting, an application.
Yeah, it's
that-
printed 1 year in here.
Yeah.
So I gotta change that, it's
Right.
official.
Right.
Exactly.
okay. Since it's, so that probably should be an action for another meeting, since it really isn't noticed here.
Okay.
All right.
So what does that?
So this, as long as the change that we're going to make is about what we mean by, POTUS and that's noted, for 2 weeks. We can start talking to boards about what is going to happen in June. We don't have to have the absolute final version of this, as long as we have general agreement that this is a statement of what we intend to do. Okay. Let's get that fixed. Town meeting date. April 22nd doesn't work. April 29th, Diane is away. What are the dates of Diane's vacation?
She's gone that week,
That
the
whole
week of the 29th.
Okay.
One of the options you had floated, Greg, was the Thursday, the 25th.
Thursday, the 25th. You could think about doing it earlier, the 8th, if you want to stick with the Monday. That would be the second Monday.
How does that?
You mean earlier in April, or you mean
Yeah.
May?
Yeah.
But we were trying to delay because of any of a number of other factors.
Right,
Budget mostly related.
right. Even that extra week is,
So, question, would there be any, so the warrant has to be completed, is it 2 weeks before? How many days before the town meeting?
yeah,
2 weeks before, okay.
I believe it's 2 weeks.
The Patriots Days is the 15th of April, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's why we got
Right,
late,
that's-
that's why we got late into April.
That's
Right.
school vacation
The
week.
29th is not good. That whole week, the 29th is not good for Dave?
Correct.
Ooh, so that's,
So I'm backtracking from that. If you did,
Right.
if you proposed an April 8th town meeting, then would the warrant have to be approved on
No.
March 25th, 2 weeks before then?
We don't want to look at a
Yes.
Thursday?
I'm,
No, that's an option. The 25th is an option, that's a Thursday.
I just thought that part of the conversations a couple of months ago was pushing everything back for budget purposes. And now we're just cutting our nose off to spite our faces.
The problem, the 25th, I happened to have talked to Alan, he's available on the 25th.
Yes.
You
know, if he had his druthers, he would stick with Monday, just because people are used to Mondays, but, you know,
Yeah.
it's a date.
If the 29th doesn't work, the problem then is the school is going to have its budget and the whatever financing they come with the feasibility study. So there would be 2 separate articles, and it would be approximately impossible to schedule them to be in both.
2 places at once.
Yeah.
you mean,
Yeah.
which date is this?
This is May 6th.
That's why
May
this-
6th, because Essex has its meeting.
Right, that's why the 6th is problematic.
Yeah,
Is-
understood.
is April 25th the good, I'm good with that, Thursday night, I'm
It's
fine.
perfectly fine.
Okay.
And is there a reason we would look at a Thursday, not a Wednesday? I'm just curious.
But no, it could be the 24th.
Okay, so it's, all right. I don't have any
Is there-
preference, I'm just curious.
Is there any value to having specifically our town meeting the day after Essex change?
Actually, I think it might be better to do it the other way around.
Pardon?
It might be better to have our vote first.
Yeah.
Give them,
In this particular year.
Yeah, I think that's.
No, just.
On the
I'm
other
asking.
hand, well, the 25th would be to have our meeting first.
Right.
Yes.
I think we're settled.
Okay.
So, we would have to check with the venue if it's available, or did you already do that?
I don't.
No.
Okay.
So should we
Billy,
say either that
John
Tuesday?
mentioned or someone mentioned the Wednesday.
I'm just thinking that time of year, schools tend to have a lot of activities.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, in case you needed 2 nights.
Yeah, that's why I'm
Start on
thinking that
Wednesday.
You
if
might want to do Wednesday, Thursday,
Yeah.
rather than Thursday
Yeah.
and Friday.
Yeah, that's good.
I just thought of that, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not anticipating 2 nights, but
Never know.
you never know.
Right.
So maybe we should aim for the 24th,
Okay.
with the second night being the 25th.
Okay.
42424.
And we will,
I'm so nauseous.
put together the ballot questions with the assumption that, the bonding will pass. And is there any chance that there'll be anything other than bonding on the ballot, come on the ballot questions?
I know now.
If somebody came up with a citizen's petition, they'd have to do it 60 days in advance. So
Right,
if they had a citizen's petition to put something on the ballot, then
we would know that ahead of
we would
time.
know that well ahead of time.
Yep.
Okay.
Town election is May. Which date is that? May 14th? Town election day?
It's the third Tuesday. I just had that open, hold on.
May
20th?
21st?
21st.
Yeah,
Third
May
Tuesday,
21st.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we can start telling people April 24th.
Yeah, if you vote that
Or do we
tonight,
need to confirm that with the school first?
but pending.
Yeah.
Pending availability.
Okay, why don't we
Hold on.
take the vote and if we have to change it,
Who's supposed to?
All right, I'll make,
I move that we set the date for the annual town meeting for Wednesday, April 24th.
second.
Discussion. Becky,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Anne says yes, John.
Yes.
Okay. Right. The, wayfinding and task force appointments.
Okay.
So again, at your last meeting, when you talked about this, you said there would be a subcommittee of the DIP. So you're certainly welcome to confirm those appointments, but because it's a subcommittee, it doesn't
We
require.
don't have to, right?
It doesn't require your appointment.
Okay, let them do their thing and
Hmm.
let's not involve ourselves where we don't need to be involved.
And I will point out that my name is on that as a select board member, and come June, I will no longer be a select board member. But we have had.
This is supposed to be finished by June.
Okay, good. There we go.
And if it's not.
Done by 6:30/24 though.
We've had board members continue on.
That's what I was going to say. We've
It
had
was very successful.
prior, yep, so, and I'm happy to do that if,
Thank you,
so.
thank you.
You cannot travel.
Okay,
You need a motion?
we have done everything except the town administrator's
That's
report.
Mr. Bellata.
But I
Oh,
thought,
Mr. Bellata.
I thought we didn't need to have a motion because we're just gonna let the,
Yeah, I think you're done.
Yeah.
You're set.
So we don't need to do it.
we don't need to do anything.
Okay.
Mr. Bellata would have to make
I
that.
know, huh?
All right, I'll be brief. We'll have the quarterly report for the 3 positions at your next meeting. Do that up for the 5th. You may have heard that we've had some water issues over at the library. You may have seen a portion of ceiling that came down a few weeks ago. I think we've at least put a stopgap measure to the leaks around the chimney, but we're still working with the roofers and insurance company on a more permanent fix. So stay tuned, but I think we've made some progress on that. You also asked about just following up on some major items from the last annual town meeting. Obviously, budget and capital items, but beyond that, there was the aggregation vote. So we received, so it got a little delayed because we reached out to Rockport, and so we joined forces with them in a joint solicitation for a vendor who would manage it for us. So we've received 2 proposals, and so we're reviewing those now. We hope to have a recommendation for your approval, hopefully at the 5th, and
I'm sorry,
and
when
get
did you
that
say?
underway. Hopefully you will ratify a recommendation at your meeting on the 5th of February
Oh, I read that.
to then proceed with that work. It is it takes a while. It can take up to 18 months to get this approved through the DPU, Department of Public Utilities. They have to sign off on it. They are very much behind, and the legislators have been trying to correct that. And so I think they've made some improvements in the process and streamlined it a bit. So I'm hoping it won't take as long as it has in the last few years. So with some luck, we should be able to roll that out a year from now, more or less. If, like I say, if things can move along a little quicker than they have in the past. So that was the one major thing I think was following up. Some unusual things from town meeting. And then, FYI on a staff discipline issue. That's ongoing. So, provide more details at a later date on that. So otherwise, that'll do me for tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that here? Good time.
Thank you, Rose.
Considering the agenda, I thought we'd be here.
I was impressed with it.
I
I was impressed with it.